Have no fear, the I Am Rapaport Stereo podcast is here with the unofficial, official, but still unofficial worldwide news correspondent, my man who has got his own podcast, which is rocking and rolling. My man, Eli Lake, is back with the I Am Rapaport Stereo podcast. I urge everybody to subscribe, rate, review Eli's podcast, Breaking History, the newest episode, Vulgarians at the Gate, and it's on, put out through the Free Press. A shout out to the Free Press, and you could find it everywhere and anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Free Press loves Mike Rapp, by the way. Free Press loves Mike Rapp. Just want to say, you're our kind of guy.
Good. Because I'm definitely, I'm definitely a whirling dervish, especially in this free press, cancel culture type of
For sure.
world. I read an article, speaking of the free press and speaking of all things that are going on in the world, worldwide news, and you are the worldwide news correspondent of the I Am Rapaport Stereo podcast. So I have to ask you a few questions about that, because you've always shared such great, important insight.
Yeah.
I know so much more than I did when I first had you on the podcast than I do now, but you are an expert, and and I told you this the other day, some of the things that you understand about how the foreign policy works in regards to the United States is so new to so many people, including myself. And I think sometimes you might take it for granted, thinking everybody knows what Eli Lake knows because you study this. And
I try to, we got to, kind of break it down for a general audience.
I think it's important because a lot of people, including myself, care more than they ever have. So, this week, Qatar has been in the news. So I'm just going to ask you, why does Qatar have so much power, and how does Qatar have so much money?
Well, okay, the money is because of the oil. And because Qatar was smart enough to kind of set up a banking system. I mean, there's a lot of banking and oil that goes together. And so they just made a mint on that. Now, if you want to, and we could spend the next 3 hours talking about this piece, but we have a massive investigation that we just dropped today on Qatar by my colleagues, Jay Solomon and Franny Block.
It's very good, by the way.
Yeah, you gotta read. That's a reference point if you really want to get into the weeds, because that is a piece about how this very wealthy nation and a very tiny nation has used its vast wealth to purchase influence all over America. Not just the traditional way with paying lawyers and lobbyists, but universities. They've got media deals. It's unbelievable how much money they have poured into influence in the last 10, 15 years. And that is a huge thing right now. I mean, you see it, I live in Washington, D.C., when a couple of years ago, when the Capitals won the Stanley Cup, you saw brought to you by Qatar all over the subway and stuff. So there is a major campaign, and this is the piece to understanding all of the people that, are even real good on Israel, like Lindsey Graham, has certainly been boosted by the Qataris. So I really got to say, you got to read it. It's a terrific piece of journalism. But the reason I think you're talking about it, it's been in the news this week, is because the Qataris just gave a gift of an Air Force One, basically, to President Trump. And the original terms of the deal was that he gets to keep the plane for his presidential library. That's insane. That's like a personal gift from a, frenemy nation. And, the U.S. relationship with Qatar is complicated. We have a military base there. The Qataris also provide their diplomatic offices, you could say, to speak to dirtbag terrorist groups like Hamas. They were important in the diplomacy with the getting out of Afghanistan, working with the Taliban. And they have a relationship with the Iranians. And the U.S. uses them as a kind of go-between at times. On the other hand, they're the one, all the other Gulf states, I'm not a fan of how Saudi organizes its society as an American who appreciates small L liberal values, but they're on the right side when it comes to radical Islamic terrorism.
Qataris.
No, Qatar is not. That's the one Gulf state that isn't.
Saudi
United
is.
Arab,
Sorry.
United Arab Emirates, these other countries that are part of the Gulf Cooperation Council, which is like, I don't know, something like 80% or 70% of the world's oil is represented in this, small group of nations in the Persian Gulf. But what you have is this one country, Qatar, that is still working with and funding the radical Islamic terror groups, whether it's Hamas. They work closely with the Taliban. They made a strategic decision basically to try to play both sides, to have the relationship with the United States, but also the relationship with radical Islam. And that has been the root of the problem. If you want to know where the money for Hamas and where the senior leadership, a lot of their senior leadership lives, they live in Qatar. Some of them live in Turkey. That's also bad, but it's mainly Qatar that provides the money and the funding, that was almost certainly used into October 7th. I mean, that's the reality.
Is there no way, for me, this week with the miracle, incredible, crazy release of hostage Edon Alexander from New Jersey, who's born in Tel Aviv, but he grew up in New Jersey, and the idea of the plane being given to Trump, whether or not that actually happens, and then it was suggested that Edon Alexander go to Qatar and meet Trump and the leaders of Qatar, and it really, Eli, it really sent me into a dark, sad spiral for a few hours. Like I was just like, what the fuck? And I came out of the spiral, and this is just a couple of days ago, but I feel like for all of our sakes, and I know you can't answer this for sure, but is it just like Qatar's not going to go anywhere and we just have to sort of deal with them the best we can and get the best and the most out of it as Americans and as Zionists? And it's like, they're not going to just disappear. We're not going to eviscerate them from the face of the earth. So we just have to we got to fucking party with them? Like, is that the reality of it?
No. There's a couple things. One is, first of all, we should say the Trump policies in this regard are at odds with them itself. It's kind of a paradox. On the one hand, you have a Department of Education at this point and a Justice Department that is for the first time really looking at all the foreign money that's poured into the universities. And Qatar throws, I think, $20 billion over the last 25 years. It's an incredible amount of money that they have poured into some of our best universities. Getting a handle on that, what is all that money buying them, is an important issue. And on the one hand, Trump has what so far looks like much better policies than any of his predecessors. On the other hand, you have Trump accepting at first the gift of the Air Force One. I actually think he's going to end up walking away from that because there was too much outrage over it. And you also have, Trump visiting Doha. He's meeting with, I think it's a great thing that Bashar al-Assad is no longer the leader of Syria, but the guy who replaced him was a former hardcore jihadist who killed Americans when he was fighting us in Iraq.
Yeah, Eli, there is no such thing as halfway jihadists. There's no such thing as halfway crooks.
I know.
Just to quote the great Mobb Deep, Prodigy Havoc, there's no such thing as halfway crooks, and there's no such thing as halfway jihadists.
I agree.
And other presidents, we'll talk about Syria, but other presidents have put sanctions on Syria. They've removed sanctions on Syria. As of the recording of this I Am Rapaport Stereo podcast, America has removed sanctions on Syria. Like, this guy's a fucking psychopath, lunatic, jihadist. I don't care if you shave him down and put him in a fucking suit. He is what he is, period.
Well, there are, I would say, it was very bad under Assad. I want to make it clear. What was before was terrible. Assad was a direct ally of Hezbollah. Assad allowed for the transshipment of the missiles that rained down on Israel. Assad was a terrible and also a brutal tyrant who killed hundreds of thousands of his own people. The new leadership of Syria has at times said things that you'd like to hear in terms of, we think minorities and Christians should be able to live here, But there have nonetheless been horrific kind of ethnic purges as well. And it's unclear whether he has ordered those or hasn't been powerful enough to stop them. But there is a real problem. The thing is, I think what Trump is trying to do here is he's saying, all right, we're going to wipe the slate clean, but it's very easy for the United States to slap sanctions back on. And the one thing that Trump has also made clear is he doesn't want any more wars in the Middle East. It's interesting. We haven't seen yet him announce that there are U.S. forces in Syria still. And we haven't seen him announce that the U.S. is pulling out of Syria because it's a small number of very highly trained special operators. So it's a little bit more complicated, but I agree with you. There is no such thing as a halfway jihadist. And if his goal is to try to turn Syria into like Taliban Afghanistan or something like that, then that's going to be a huge problem. And it's one of the reasons why, I find this amazing and fascinating, but one of the subplots of all of this is that you're seeing hundreds and now thousands of Druze citizens of Syria saying they want to be under Israel. That's amazing. Druze are Arabs, by the way. That's not like a special, so what you're seeing is that like, there's a huge reshuffling of stuff right now. And
there was just a terrible assault and violence and, killings of the Druze in Syria.
Yeah.
In the last couple of
Israel, they want Israel
month.
to be their protector. Right. And by the way, this is why, thank God, under pressure from Clinton and later Obama, Israel didn't give up the Golan Heights. Could you imagine if they didn't have that very important strategic position right now? The other thing to say is that for all the footsie that Trump is playing with Qatar and it's, and there's these negotiations with Iran, we don't know how that's going to go. All that's on the worrying side. He's been pretty good on Israel. He has not been like Biden. He hasn't tried to micromanage their decisions on war and so forth. You're not seeing any kind of pressure in that regard. So I think there's a lot of unresolved policies at this point. I'm most concerned that he's going to go for a weak deal with Iran, and that will allow Iran to keep its ability to make nuclear fuel. So what it'll be basically is that he will lift sanctions in exchange for a promise from the Iranians not to enrich uranium to the point that they could be used in a nuclear weapon. And that's just not going to be good enough. And especially since right now they're defenseless against an airstrike because of Israel's work last year. So it would be nice to try to take out some of the industrial scale centrifuges that the Iranians have assembled.
I agree.
That is unclear what's going to happen right now with Trump. Although what Trump's also saying is it's not this, we're not going to negotiate forever. There's a time limit here. If we can't get to a good deal, then we're going to have to go the other way. So, we'll see. This might be his way of trying to convince the Tucker Carlson wing of the party that he did everything he could to try to do it without force, but now he has to use force because he won't allow them to get a nuclear weapon. If he does that, that'll be great. If he ends up kicking the can down the road for another bad Obama-style deal, then it's going to be very bad for Israel. It's going to be very bad, I think, for the region of the world.
I agree. And I hope he loses his patience because they're weak. You said it. Israel decimated their defense system in October of 2024. And the world hasn't officially thanked Israel for doing that. And there was some incredible IAF people, and some of them were women, and they went in there in one beautiful night and
unbelievable
knocked the shit out of them. And it's a really
that wasn't even, by the way, that wasn't even their best game.
No, they went in there.
That wasn't even their best game. That wasn't their like 55 at the Garden.
No.
That was like their third best game.
That wasn't even a game, Eli. I think they were in the warm-up line. I think it was like a lot of dunks in the warm-up line. Like, yo, we can do this. We could start taking it to, shooting threes and all that. But right now we're just warming up and we're showing you like, boom, we can fucking dunk on your head. You said Tucker Carlson and the right wing and the Tucker Carlson part of the Republican Party is, I know you can't say this for sure. It's all your opinion. Does Tucker Carlson have a say in the party? Is he like a rabble-riser, pot-stirring fuck? Because I've come to terms with some of these people, and I get some of these people. I think Tucker Carlson, because I know we're going to get into Kanye. I think Tucker Carlson is a bad guy. I think Tucker Carlson has anti-Semitic thoughts through his head. And I think his whole America First thing is a put on. I think he's, this is his lane, this is his audience. But the amount of discussion that he does about Jews in Israel, and not just Israel, it's Jews in Israel. The amount of people that he has on his show about Jews in Israel, and it's all negative views, negative points of view, negative vibes. And anybody would go on Tucker Carlson. There's so many great people that are pro-Zionist, pro-Israel, that he could have on. He doesn't have any of them on. When he mentions Israel, it's always with a negative vibe and a negative guest. What is his fucking deal, Tucker Carlson? He could have on Barry Weiss. He could have on Dan Senor. He could have on you. He could have on Aviva Klumpus.
He's on jihad against Barry Weiss. He's definitely going after her.
Well, fuck Tucker Carlson, man. I can't stand this motherfucker.
Well, okay, so a couple things. I've known Tucker for a long time. I mean, in Washington, I've been on his old Fox show. And I would say that, there was a moment in 2020 when the whole media was, insane and telling us there were mostly peaceful riots when there were real riots and shit like that. And he was the one place you could go and you could get, real information. So I credit him for that. By the way, he is a really smart guy. I think you're right. He has taken a turn. But here's the other thing I would say about Tucker Carlson. I wonder sometimes how much of this is a play to take away the audience of the very successful Ben Shapiro media-founded operation, The Daily Wire. The Daily Wire is a right-wing conservative news organization that did better than all of the other, conservative news outlets. It took off. And this is a way of kind of trying to get people to turn on his audience by making Israel the big issue. And I don't think it really should be the big issue. But I think that's one element of maybe what's going on, is that Tucker's started his own media company, and he is trying to very cynically create another space on the right. The other thing is this. He has found that by kind of signaling, if you will, in some ways, that, there's this, powerful Jewish lobby, Israel lobby, that is silencing us. And that if you say the wrong thing, the bad things are going to happen to you. Well, he's playing on, there's a lot of people out there that want to hear that. So there's an audience of Americans, and we're a big country, as you know, and you don't need that many. And, so he's gone there. I also have a problem, by the way, that he went to Vladimir Putin's Russia and had this fawning interview with the president of Russia, where he let him get away with all kinds of stuff that he wouldn't have done if he had on, somebody who he disagreed with. So I have a lot of criticisms of him, but I think it's a problem. And in terms of his power within the Republican Party, I can tell you that nobody wants to cross him. I think if Tucker goes after you, it's a huge problem, kind of on the right, and you will find yourself vulnerable in a primary if you're an elected official. And so I think that's another part of it as well, where there's a kind of sense where he does have a lot of power, and he was brought in early on in the transition in Mar-a-Lago as they were coming up with who was going to staff the second Trump administration. Tucker was, one of those voices that could veto somebody that he didn't think would be worth it. He had a lot of influence in terms of who would get the top jobs in the U.S. government. So he's a powerful figure right now on the right. And I think he's made it pretty clear that he doesn't, what he says about Iran doesn't make any sense to me, which is he always puts it on we don't want to start a war with Iran. This is a country that blew up our soldiers in Iraq and Afghanistan with these roadside bombs. This is a country that is menacing its neighbors, that supports terrorism, that has kidnapped Americans, that has killed Americans. Iran's been at war with us. You know what I'm saying? So he's flipping that in a way that makes it seem like people are seeking out war with Iran without acknowledging all the things that Iran is doing that, are obviously they are continuing to be at war with us. So for me, it's like I have a real problem with how he presents it. But unfortunately, he's a big platform right now, and just got to deal with it. This is the world we live in, unfortunately.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I don't have the couth or the coolness or the I can't. I'm too emotional to play games with people like him. I see through the bullshit and I see what they're doing, and I get, you're right about the media company and the Ben Shapiro of it all. And
Yeah.
I just don't have the tolerance for it. It's too like, mind gamey, and I'm not down with that shit. I'm down with, I'm not down with that shit. I think
But
it's
here,
bullshit.
can I just point something out, like, because you've lived this, okay? When people showed up at your clubs where you were performing and putting pressure on the venues, that was an effort to try to silence you, to cancel you. It didn't work, obviously. It's not going to cancel Mike Rapp. But the point is that he's making it seem like the only side that's trying to cancel anyone is the pro-Israel side. I don't know about you. My view is I don't want to cancel, I understand that there's anti-Semites out there. I want to use my free speech to counter their anti-Semitic speech. That's how I look at it. Maybe there are people who think that there should be people who are canceled for saying certain things. But it is a kind of like weird vice that the Jewish Americans right now are in, because we're really not calling on people to be canceled. We're not calling on people that saying you can't say that, there are going to be consequences. It's the other sides that's doing it, but then they're playing the victim, very much like the Israel-Palestine conflict. You know what I'm saying?
100%.
It's the same thing. Like I'm saying, what is it when they're like protesting you? That what are they doing? They're trying to get the club owner to cancel your gig. That's what they're doing.
100%.
They're trying to stop you from earning your money and you're plying your trade and saying what you want to say. And that they do that shit all the time. And it's like, then they go around and they say, oh, you're trying to censor me. That's bullshit.
Right.
Yeah.
I totally agree. All right. You said you had some questions for me. What's the question?
Well, I wanted to get your take on like, I wouldn't call myself necessarily, I don't defend Kanye's ridiculous and just asinine opinions and what he says and his flirtations with anti-Semitism, which is more than a flirtation now, it's who he is, I guess. But this seems to have crossed a line, this latest. I just wanted to kind of get, what the fuck, man? And by the way, isn't it weird that black people are in the video? Do you know about Hitler? Do you know what the Nazis said about, like, the black race? I mean, what the fuck is wrong with you?
I didn't see the video. I think people will do anything for money. Fame is the ultimate drug. And if Kanye says you're going to be in a Kanye video, people will they'll put on the baby oil and they'll throw up Hitler signs and they'll do whatever. I mean, I think that he is rubber room status. I think he should be in a mental institution. I think that I'm glad that the Kardashians won't let him see his kids. Anybody who says he loves Hitler and loves Nazis and he's a Nazi, why would you want any kids, let alone the mother of your kids? Why would you want this person around them? I think Donda's alive. I think his mother's actually still alive in Cuba.
Whoa,
I think that's my theory. I think that Donda is alive with Tupac in Cuba, and she could no longer stand. She can no longer stand the reality that her son is Kanye West. So I think she lives in Cuba in shame with Tupac. So I mean,
would you concede that over his career, I'm not talking about like over his career, the man has put out some bangers, no doubt.
No doubt. I mean,
okay, yeah.
I mean, of course he's put out more than just some bangers. I mean, he's one of the most prolific artists of his generation. That being said, I could move on from listening to him ever again. I never put him in my top 5, never at his high point ever. But, I'm not going to say he wasn't, he didn't make a lot of incredible music. But I put
him in the top 5 producers. I wouldn't call him a top 5 lyricist.
Yes, I would have to look. I don't know if I'd put him in my top 5, but I wouldn't argue with him being in a top 5. He's made smackers, he's made club bangers, he's made hardcore hip hop, boom bap beats. He's he was an extremely prolific and extremely important artist. Unfortunately, those days are done. And he's like a boxer who's been punched and beaten up too many times, and he's continued to show up in the ring. He's like a 51-year-old heavyweight fighter who keeps coming to the ring flabby, out of shape, and needs to just, shut it down. That's where he's at now. And I think he should be in an institution, calling for Chief to hold his arms up and throw the balls in like Jack Nicholson in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Love the One Flew Over the Cuckoo's. Okay. Since we got a little bit more time left, I just want to get how excited are you about this next team, man? I'm
very excited about this Knicks team. I'm hoping and praying by the time this I Am Rapaport Stereo podcast comes out that we are in the Eastern Conference Finals, old school versus the Indiana Pacers. There's no love lost there either. I mean, when I think of the Indiana Pacers, it's not so much the franchise or the city, the way Boston affects me beyond the Celtics. The Celtics, right. There is no Celtics-Knicks rivalry. There never was. Even in the 60s and 70s, I mean, we had some good matchups. As I documented,
early 70s, there was a rivalry. Because they won the year after you got, there was a little bit.
But it wasn't like back and forth. It was more the Lakers, Celtics. That being said, New York, Boston, New York, Patriots, Giants, Red Sox, Yankees, Mets, Bruins, Rangers, and just Boston in general. Yeah. They have an inferiority complex towards all things New York. And that's fine. This is the world's greatest city. Boston's a fine city with great people. However, you're never going to be New York. And you could have Banner after Nomar Garcia-Parra and your Matt Damons and your Ben Afflecks and all the great comedians. You talk about comedians that have come out of Boston. The list goes on and on and on. That being said, you'll never be New York. And that's why this year, going at the Celtics, it's like a double, triple win. It's not just a win or a series. It's like it means more to put our thumb on them and remind them that we're the greatest city in the world.
I agree. I have to also say, you look at the roster on paper and you're like, how's that team going to get all these points? And then Jalen Brunson finds a way with that old man style, but he has mastered it. And it's like a breath of fresh air in the sense of he's bringing back this thing. Remember, it was like when I just thought everyone was trying to be Steph Curry. You know what I mean? Like everyone's going to just be that guy dropping bombs at behind the three, off the dribble, doing all that thing. And he's like the mid-range master. He's so gritty. And it seems like he's just one of those incredible athletes who, when the pressure is at its highest, he performs at his highest level. My hat is off to him. As much as I feel as a Sixers fan, I fucking hate the Knicks and the Celtics. But this series really just brought me in. I mean, they showed so much heart. And they were winning that game before Tatum. Got injured.
The game was done. The game was done before the great Jason Tatum went down. And obviously,
and by the way, he was having an all-world performance. I mean,
he's sick. And I hope he's better soon, because you never want to win like that. You never want to close out a series like that. Ever.
But they were going to win that game even if he wasn't down. I really believe that. They were up by 7 or 8, and when he got the Achilles
game
thing.
4 was done. So that game was done. But I wish him well, and I wish the Celtics well in the future. It's just not this year. This year's done. Yeah. As of the recording of this I Am Rapaport Stereo podcast, I hope I'm not, I have to eat those words. Anyway, Eli, I want everybody to make sure they follow you on Twitter, where you're one of my first people every day. I go to you on Twitter. You can follow Eli Lake at Eli Lake, and you subscribe, rate, review to his podcast, Breaking History, which is put out by the Free Press. And make sure you check out this new episode, Vulgarians at the Gate, which is how censors lost the culture war and all things Lenny Bruce. This is an incredible episode. We talk Qatar, Saudi, terrorist, Kanye, and Lenny Bruce. Who's doing that?
Knicks.
Nobody else is doing that. And we made a great Mobb Deep reference. This is a fantastic episode once again.
Museum quality podcaster.
Boom. Eli, I appreciate you coming and I
Thank you,
appreciate
Mike
the
Rapp.
insight and the friendship, man. I consider you a friend
Me
now.
too. Absolutely.
I am Rapaport podcast.